Jimmy's got the mic, the crowd goes wild, talking dreams we chased since we were both just a child. Entrepreneurs' heartbeats like a minute.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Elite Real Estate Podcast. Happy to be here another Friday morning. Really pumped up here, ready to get some things going. So very excited about my guest this morning. I'm going to bring him in here in a second. But again, live on KGCI Radio. The Breakfast Club is getting dialed in here, and we are streaming everywhere. So welcome to the show this morning. Again, very excited about my guest. Going to bring him in right now, Mr. Nick Coppola, one of our brokers here in the state of Michigan. My friend, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Jimmy. Thanks. How are you this morning?
I'm great, man. I'm great. Thanks for joining me this morning. And
absolutely,
yeah, it's always interesting. I can't talk about all the other states, right? I can only speak about ours, and
sure.
and the level of interest and the level of attendance and all the things that you brokers do for us here. I mean, you guys you're at every event. You do as much as you can, right?
Sure.
But you and Chris, you guys are at everything. You know what I mean? Like, and it's so nice to have a cover. Like, you and I can just pick up the phone and talk, and we don't even have to talk about real estate.
Sure. Absolutely. No, and I love that, by the way. I love that. That's amazing. No, we're truly blessed in the state of Michigan. We have a really great group of agents, across the entire state, right? And, prior to coming here 3 years ago, I, managed brick and mortar locations. And that's always nice, but that's very localized, when you manage an office in a smaller geographical area. This gives you an opportunity to, shake hands with and talk to and interact with agents across our entire state. We're very, very fortunate here at EXP, and we have great agents all over the place. And so for us, it's actually a treat to be able to come to these events and actually put the names with the faces, actually see the people, interact, and get to know them. And you and I mean, besides broker agent, we've become friends. I mean, it's that type of relationship, which is I'm truly blessed to be in this particular spot.
Yeah. No. We all appreciate it. Right. And we all, that's, again, it makes things just so much easier. Right. It just makes things easier. If you guys ask me to come speak in the state room, I always enjoy doing that part. Like, it just makes things so much easier when we all have the same goals and the same vision.
Absolutely.
It's true. How do we just make each other better, right? How do we help other agents get better? It's it's all those things, right? There's the official broker things that you have to do, right?
Sure.
But no, man. So we really appreciate. I know the Breakfast Club, and we do this coaching call every morning, and again, when you get the opportunity and you have the time, you jump into that call in the morning.
Yeah, I love being invited on that call, by the way. I wish I could be on it every single morning. Unfortunately, my schedule doesn't allow me to be on it every morning, but I try diligently, and you guys may not know this or not. I literally put it on my calendar to try and get in there once a week. I don't always make that, but that's my goal personally.
Yeah.
Not that, you guys force me or anything. I'm just an invited guest like everybody else. And I genuinely appreciate that invite. But what's really nice for me is that, I get to interact with you guys again on a completely different level than in the broker room. I get to offer some feedback, maybe some suggestions, even some scripts and dialogues. We've done those, in the past, role plays, different things like that. And, it's kind of neat because it gives the agents a different perspective on Nick in terms of, he's not just a broker. He was an agent, right? He still is an agent. I still sell some real estate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not as much as I used to, but I still meet with clients. I still do listing appointments. I'm still showing houses. I'm still going to home inspections and things like that. So it kind of plants the seed in those agents' mind, the ones that are actually on the call, that, hey, this guy's real. Like, he's not just preaching this stuff from afar, or a document or whatever. I'm presenting that same document to my clients that I'm asking you to present, which is nice.
Yeah, you're actually getting the signature on the hood of your car. But
100%, 100%. Yes.
and so let me ask you this. This is an interesting question. So it's like, because you're still actively doing real estate, but let me ask you this. So when you're doing a deal, um,
Mhm.
do you find yourself like really paying attention to like the agent that's you're doing the deal with? Like, are they doing everything right? Or like, do you
That's a great question. Yeah, I do. I do. I actually do. It's so funny because, like I'm, you know, critiquing certain things, but I also have this philosophy, and a lot of the agents who have interacted with me know that I say this to them regularly. I don't care about what the other agent does. I care about what I do. As long as I stay true to my process, dot all of my I's and cross all of my T's, I know that I'm doing everything I can to have a successful transaction. Now, if their broker hasn't trained them well, or they haven't, crafted their skill as a professional agent, that's not totally on me. But what's surprising is that a lot of times when I'm doing a transaction, I will have those agents that will say to me, "Hey, do you mind if I ask you a question?" And, I'm like, "Okay, sure, of course."
right?
"How did you know that?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, now it's clicking," right? They don't have somebody that's truly a mentor to them. They don't have somebody that they feel like they can go to ask these questions. Because if you did, you wouldn't be asking me, some stranger that you just met. You'd be going to that person, right? So it tells me that they don't have that awesome mentor relationship that they need in the industry.
Yeah, and it is true, right? You and I've had this conversation. I know you've had this conversation with other people too. The difference with EXP, right, is our brokers are available all the time.
Yep.
Where you said you were a broker at a brick and mortar, and you weren't always available.
No.
You know,
No, it was really hard. I didn't know it at the time, because sometimes when you're in the moment, right, you don't realize you're
right?
just doing the job. But I was a broker at a brick and mortar. I mean, like, I was a one-man band. Like, I had an admin at the front desk, but if she called in sick, agents still wanted to be paid. So I'm over there playing transaction settlement specialist, right? And if the toilet backed up, I'm playing plumber back there with a plunger.
Yeah,
And if we ran out of paper, I was going to Staples, but that's not my highest and best use, right? You don't
right.
really want Nick running and getting paper. You want Nick answering questions, helping agents grow, helping them successfully close a transaction, helping with a seller that may be unreasonable, or a buyer that may be unreasonable, or helping navigate a transaction somehow, some way. That's my highest and best use. And that's one of the things about EXP that's completely different than any other brokerage. They allow the people to be at their highest and best use.
Yeah, absolutely, right. It's one of those things. I just had a conversation with Gogo the other day, and we were talking about the exact same thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, figure out what your hourly rate is,
Yep.
and if you're whatever your hourly rate is, you shouldn't be doing things that are below that hourly rate, right?
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
somebody else should be doing those things, right? So to your
Correct.
point, Nick shouldn't be running out to get paper, right? Nick should be answering like, "Hey, I've got this lawyer on the phone, right? Like, what do I do? I don't know what
Yeah.
that is," right?
Yeah. No, it's true, and that's true, Jimmy, and that's really true. And this model, this company, I mean, to their credit, like, they built it that way. Like, that's the way it's built. That's why, like, on the broker team, like, and I mean this with love and respect to our team, because it's true, and you guys don't get to see all this. So I'm going to give you a peek behind the door into the kitchen. Even though your food comes out great, like, here it is. Christy and I and Chat, we don't do this by ourselves. We have 4 contract analysts that look and review all your contracts. We have settlement specialists that settle your files. We have agent service analysts that help us with all of the state meetings and trainings and different things that we do. And without them, without that support, they're the ones that are under the water that you're not getting a glimpse of. Yeah, we're coming to the event, we're front and center. But without them, we couldn't do this. We couldn't manage, 2,000 plus agents in the state of Michigan with just 3 people. It would be
Right.
virtually impossible to do.
Right. And it's one of the things we've had that conversation. So when everything, the NAR settlement, right? When everything happened in August, and all of us, all these changes, we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. But
Yeah.
it was one of the things you and I talked about was you were so thankful at that point for all the support that you had because of your admin staff, right? Like, I mean, all those changes like hit you in the face at one time, and we had to get it done quick.
100%. That is true. I mean, without them, we wouldn't have been able to make that possible. Now, look, yeah, were we the voice? Were we the people that were presenting the new information? Sure. But were they helping us behind the scenes get that stuff prepped, ready to go, scheduling, making sure we were where we needed to be? Absolutely. So again, without them, it just doesn't happen. Like that is the underpinnings of everything that we do. And again, to EXP's credit, they do a really great job. And this isn't broadcasted enough. Like, we don't tell people this enough. They allow people to be at their highest and best use. And that is really important in order to make everyone successful, right? That saying, you know, rising tides, you know, raise all ships.
Yep.
That's true, right? That's what happens.
Yep. And again, so, and I, you know, I know you still are in production. I'm still in production, and we see these things because now I'm doing deals with other agents, and I'm like, you don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's December, man. Like, this is just changed months ago.
Yeah.
So to that point, you know, I just brought a new agent on the other day, and you know, he came in and sat down with me, and he was at a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things. The first thing, one of the things I did is I brought him into the world, into the broker stateroom.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Wow, you can just get a broker anytime you want." I'm like, "Yep, you just go in here, take a ticket, and then wait for him." And then he's like, "Wow." He's like, I didn't hardly see my broker when I was at this. I'm like, "You don't," because, and then depending on depending on where you're at, if your broker is still in production, and they have to produce to eat, right? Like, that's a whole nother problem. And we see that all the time. Right. And so that's, again, it's the blessing of EXP. And again, with the support staff and all the things that happen behind the scenes that, again, like you said, we don't get to see. We get the meal that's brought out. We don't get to see the cooks.
Very, very true. Very true. You know, it is funny because we did talk about this, and I think we talked about it online at one point in time, but you know, what's awesome about our system is that you can get access to a broker in a multitude of different ways. And we look at it as communication channels, right? So we have EXP World, which is virtual, which is incredible. And I encourage all agents to use it. If you're not using it, you're missing out. And it's really pretty easy. It's exp.world, you know, that you can get into to see us. And you can see any broker that way, right? Any state broker. So you can get into the world. It's any browser, your mobile device, you know, your computer, your tablet, whatever it is. That's one channel. I mean, workplace chat, another channel. And we've set up group chats with agents, right? And I know we have one for you as well. And what's powerful about that is if you think about it, when you group chat all of the brokers, if Nick's unavailable or has the day off, or I'm on this podcast for an hour and a half, well, guess what? Christy's picking it up, Chet's picking it up, or one of our CCAs is picking it up. So it's not going unnoticed, right? People always say, do you have an email? I'm like, no, we have a centralized email. They're like, well, why? And I'm like, because you don't want it just coming specifically to me, because if I'm not in front of the computer for 4 hours, I'm not going to see it.
Right.
But with a centralized box, the first available broker is picking it up, is really what's happening. So, and then we make a ton of outbound calls. I know agents may not think that. We make a ton. We keep track. We keep a matrix of how many outbound calls we make. And we log every single one of those calls. So when I pick up the phone and call Jimmy and we talk about a file, one of the reasons I'm asking you for the address is because, one, I'm looking it up in SkySlope to look at your docs. And two, I'm also logging that call and what we talked about. I'm saying, hey, Jimmy asked about earnest money deposit on 1234 Anywhere Street, right? Here's the questions. This is the provided advice, whatever it might be. All of that is logged into the system. And what that does is that creates a really cohesive experience, because if you get Chet next time or Christy next time, they pull up your profile and they can see every single thing that I told you.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Again, I'm giving you a peek behind the curtain, right? You know, it's like to show you like a little bit of what we do. But one of the reasons we do all that is because we're trying diligently to create a really great user experience for our audience, and our agents, right?
Yeah, no, I love that, because it is every time I've had to contact you guys for whatever reason, right? And there was stuff I saw, I picked up online, and I sent it to you guys like, hey, can we do this? And, no, we absolutely cannot. I was like, it was something another agent had done, and I was like, hey, can we do this? And you guys were like, no, we can't do that. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's not something we could do, right?
it was a
Yeah.
really good idea. Like I thought. But
Yeah.
that's why I'm not the state broker, because I thought that was a really good idea, just advertising that the way he did. But no, so this year, this year's been challenging, right? It's been different. We had a big shift in gears. We had a big shift in the market, right? I read a stat the other day that a couple things that really stood out to me the other day was they said this is the slowest real estate market's been in 35 years. And on top of that, right, the other stat that I saw was, 47% of real estate agents only sold one home last year, this year. And so with all those challenges and all those things, like what's it been like on the broker side of things to see, a market shift, a shift of paperwork, a shift of all these things, and what's it been like on your side?
So, I saw those stats too. We've had the lowest number of units. 1995 was the last year that the same kind of unit numbers. Even 2008, 9, 10, we sold more units than we did. But what's happened is it got masked a little bit because of the volume. So prices kept appreciating, but we didn't sell the units. And agents always get lulled into this false number of volume, right? Yeah. Volume isn't really the tell, right? There's two tells, and the one tell is how many units are we selling? That's the first one. And then another one that we use is a word that we think is important, or I think is important, I should say, is how many of my agents are online. Now, I'm not talking online like Google or social media or whatever. How many of my agents are actually producing, right? They have a transaction. Do they have a listing? Do they have a pending? Do they have a sale, right? And how often? So those two numbers are a little more telling when you think about running a brokerage. So you want agent productivity to be high. You want your average agent to sell, 4.2 homes per year if you can, right? Or whatever it might be, whatever the number is. And every company is going to have their own baseline, if you will. Okay. So when on the brokerage side, when we look at that, we had several challenges this year. One, we had rising interest rates. Two, we had a decrease in units. 3, we had disengaged agents in terms of NAR settlement, right? They weren't actively, because if you're only doing one deal a year, let's be honest, you're not very engaged. I'm not trying to be mean, but if if you had a doctor that was only doing one surgery a year, would you really want that doctor? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? Right. He's not very engaged, right? You want somebody that's in their craft because it's a time on task thing, right? How do you get better at something? Time on task. The more you do it, the more proficient you become at it. Riding a bike, ice skating, roller skating, swimming, basketball. I mean, you're a coach, so you know time on task. Why do you keep doing drills over and over and over again? Because it's time on task, right? And so when you think about it from that perspective, that became a little challenging with communicating the policy changes for NAR, because you had a group of agents, and that's not just EXP, this is across the country, all brokerages, all agents that were somewhat disengaged in our own industry. So that's a challenge, right? And then as a broker team, you got to say, well, it's easy to get a hold of Jimmy. Jimmy's engaged, right? Jimmy's showing up. Jimmy's coming to meetings. Jimmy's reaching out to the brokers. Jimmy wants the information. Great. But what about Susie, who's did the one deal? How do we engage her? And that ultimately becomes the question. What's the outreach? How do we get to Susie to make sure that even though she's only doing one deal, how do we make sure she's getting the information? Or at least knows that she can come into the brokers and get the information when she needs it. And that's the challenge, right? That's always the challenge with that particular piece.
Yeah, because again, and with me, with my agents, I'm constantly like, get in workplace, get on the state. I put the state meeting at 9:30 on Wednesday. That's on my team. That's on all their calendars, right? Like, we'll do it as a team. We'll just jump in the other room and watch it on the TV together. Because again, it's again staying engaged, right? And now I'm not surprised when changes happen, because we've done such a good job of staying in front of any of these changes.
Yep.
But now I see, like, and I totally understand what you're saying now is like, how and what is the outreach for that? Like, how do you get a client engaged that way?
So we use those communication channels, right? So we're sending emails, we're sending workplace chats, we're sending, we're picking up the phone and doing care calls. And, so we're trying to get people engaged as much as we can. And it's not a Nick thing, right? It's a group. It's our whole broker team.
Sure.
We're all trying to lift, it's not one person. So what happens with that is that, we look at the list and we say, who hasn't had a care call in 90 days, right? Then they're on the list. They need one because we haven't touched that person. So we try to touch all of our agents, 3 to 4, if we can, 5 or 6 times a year, and at least have a conversation with them. So they're like, oh yeah, Nick, he's one of my brokers,
Right.
glad he reached out. So if we're in between of that touch, they realize, hey, I have a question. Oh, that Nick guy called me before, I should reach out to him. Or Christy called me before, I should reach out to her.
I love, yeah. Because that's always the difficult part, right? And as we grow, right, as a company, and we bring more agents together, that's where you get kind of lost in the sauce. Me running the Marks team for a while there, like you have 100 agents, and that was 100 agents. That wasn't a couple thousand agents, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's hard to. But I appreciate you guys doing that, because that is the thing, right? It's how do I get my clients or my agents engaged, and to get them up and running, right? So again, I kind of revert back to this agent that I just brought on. He texted me. I was texting him throughout the process of his onboarding, right? Where how is everything going with the onboarding? And again, the onboarding piece, man, that has gotten, over the 4 or 5 years like that I've known, is so much easier now. Although I was kind of thrown into it the day of, but so he's like, man, he's like, he called me and he's like, this is the most communication I've had from a brokerage at all, like just through onboarding. He's like, because I sent an email, I got to reply right back, right out, and then he's like, and then you've been texting me and he's like, so this has been incredible from a standpoint of just communication. And I'm like, that is because we're technology, right? Like the technology that we use makes that a lot easier. And we do care about our agents, and we do care that our agents are selling more than one house, right? And
correct.
And we want them to, to make sure that we're providing all the things that we need to provide. So we appreciate you guys for that. That's for sure.
Well, thank you. I mean, I really thank you for that. I mean, we really do appreciate that people do notice, right? So it's important. And one of the things I encourage all agents to do is you get these in your email, and I know that they get ignored, but I encourage you not to ignore them. You get something in your email called EXPNPS. That's Nancy Paul Simon. That is a survey. That is our report card as a broker team, right? That is you being able to say, hey, the broker team did a wonderful job. Now, look, we're always looking for 10s, right? We want to think that we're the best, right? And we hope that we are. We want to be the best. But the cool part about that survey is you can do it in less than 60 seconds. You give a number, and then there's a dialogue box for you to give comments. And if somebody does a phenomenal job, if the ASA who's onboarding you does a great job, put their name in there. Davo was awesome. Brittany was amazing. You know what I mean? Christy Rice is the best broker on the planet. I mean, whatever it is that you want to say it, right? They read those. Glenn Sanford reads those, right? He wants to know how his company is functioning. We read those. We want to know how we're functioning. So I know it doesn't seem like a big deal to the agents. Just another email from EXP, whatever. You know what I mean? I'll delete it. But I encourage all of you, please fill those out. Like, it's important. It's the feedback we get, right? And how do you know that you're doing something well or you're not doing something well? By the feedback that you get.
Yep. And here I'll make this easier for you for the agents to understand what those NPS things are. You know how we always ask for our Zillow reviews, or we always ask for our realtor.com reviews, and we
There it
always ask
is.
our clients for that. This is what these guys are asking for us.
Yeah,
Just
there it is.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
there it is. You know,
Agents always want these 5-star reviews. Well, could you give a 5-star review? Right?
absolutely,
Take
right?
60
Absolutely.
seconds to give the review, for goodness sake. It's just like feedback when you on showing time, right? Give the feedback on showing time.
Yes, please, please. We want it, right? We're looking for it. So
Yeah. So you want a 5-star review? Give your brokers your 5-star reviews back.
there you go. Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Now everybody gets it, I think.
Yeah.
But and again, it is I think the one thing is too is we look at we do get a lot of emails, right? Like, and I always say, agents will reach out to me too and say, and this is one of the best pieces of advice you gave me as a team leader was stop trying to do all the things, right? Like, stop trying to do all the broker things. Like, let the brokers do their things. And that really resonated with me, because now the agents on my team mostly just they'll go straight to you. They'll skip right past me and they'll go right to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know.
It's okay. No, it's good. That's what we're here for. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's why you have managing brokers.
Yeah.
That's all of that, right? And look, we're never going to be like, hey, you're the team lead, you should be taking these phone calls. That is never going to come out of my mouth. That's never going to come out of Christy's mouth. It's not going to come out of any of the team. We welcome that, right? Like, we want you to do that. Like, that's because when you come to us with those kind of questions, we're going to be able to guide them in order to stay in compliance as well, right? Look, do you think I love compliance? I don't. Nobody loves compliance. But here's what really happens, right? We all get a real estate license. And indirectly, when you get that real estate license, you agree to all of the rules, state laws, statutes, all of those things. When you join NAR, you agree to all the fine print. When you join the MLS, you agree to all the fine print. Sort of like your iPhone. You skip over the 48 pages and click accept because you just want to use the phone. That's what you're doing. So you can't say, it's kind of like a driver's license, right? You can't say, well, I didn't know the speed limit on this road is 40 miles an hour, and that's why I was going 80. The cop's like, I don't care. You have a driver's license. It's your job to know. And that's what compliance is like. So when we're asking agents or telling agents, like, hey, do it this way, you know what I mean? Like, this is what's going to keep you out of trouble. We're not trying to be hard on you. We're trying to make sure that you get paid. Like, that's what we truly want. If you think I don't want to pay an agent, completely wrong answer. I want every agent to get paid. I want to get paid when I'm doing things, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can wrap your head around that piece of it a little bit more, that, hey, we're trying to help you. We're trying to make sure that your documents are in order so you get paid. That's why we're asking for your SkySlip files when you get signatures, not after it's already closed. Because after the game is over, I can't help you.
Right.
But while it's being played, I can jump in and I can run interference. I can call a timeout. I can call a different play. I can suggest a different path. But when the game is over, forget it. Like, there's nothing I can do to help you at that point.
Yeah.
And I know agents are frustrated. Well, why do you need this? Who cares if you have the file? I care for you, right? I care for you. That's why I care.
Right. Melissa just said, I'm so glad to hear you say that about contacting the state broker for broker questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah.
Melissa's down in Florida, but she's on our calls every day. And that was one of the things that again, it goes back to the same thing. And it for as a team leader, right? It's sometimes we have to check our ego at the door, right? Sure. We have to be like, you know what? I don't have all the answers, right? I'm a team leader. I'm not a genius. You know what I mean? Like, if I was a genius, I don't know if I'd be a team leader. No, I don't.
So Jimmy, can we say one thing really quick about this contacting your broker? Look, I am only licensed in the state of Michigan. I just want to clarify. And I know that we're on the radio and we're broadcasting live. Here's what I'm going to tell everybody that's listening today. Please contact your state broker for specific. The information I'm giving is very general today. But what I'm saying to you is that every state, at least with EXP, I can't speak for other companies. They have a broker team. I've interacted with a lot of them since I've been here. They're all excellent. They all do a great job. All of us have a lot of passion for the position. So please contact your broker team.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, on that call in the morning, you know, you guys see the call there running on the bottom line there, but that call is every morning at 7:30. Now, what I, you know, and we give a lot of advice and a lot of coaching on that call.
Yeah.
But then I'm always like, hey, listen, I'm in Michigan. So if you're in Georgia or North Carolina or California, wherever we have callers on from, or Florida, I always say, check with your broker. Here's what I would do. Check with your broker, though. Like, I'm not an attorney. Check with your broker. Right. So I give the advice and then, but always double check with your broker. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
I know Michigan pretty well.
Yep.
But I'm not in Florida. So not
Correct.
yet. Yeah.
Correct.
Melissa said our Florida brokers are amazing. I think they're underutilized by our agents.
I would agree with you. I've had several interactions with the Florida team. They do an amazing job. It's a big state. There's a lot going on there. So they do an amazing job. Again, I haven't run into any broker team, you know, that I've said, I mean, they're all good. You know, we have a lot of things where we do things together and we're on calls together and trainings and things like that. And they're all amazing. They all do a great job. Like, we're so fortunate at EXP with the broker teams that we have. They do a great job of hiring the right people for the positions. Again, highest and best use. Like, they're very, very good at that. So if you're not contacting your broker teams, I really feel like you're kind of missing out.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think they are underutilized. Right. I think for the most part, I think they are underutilized because we do try to solve all of our own problems, which in turn usually creates more problems.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it like this, this is an analogy somebody said to me. I didn't make this up, right? Is there a reason when you fly on a jet across the country that there's more than one pilot in the cockpit? Why isn't the cockpit designed with one seat in it? Just one guy, one gal, one person sitting there flying this big plane. There's a pilot, there's a co-pilot, there's a third navigator, and they all bounce off of each other, right? And in a moment of crisis, each person has a specific job function, right?
Yep.
And trust me, you want that if you're in a plane. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, like, I want that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I need that, right?
So that's kind of your broker team, right? Like, we have a job function, and you know, you should be utilizing that when you need it.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, because the negative piece that agents think is like, if I'm on the phone with my broker, I must be in trouble. I'm like, well, no, they're there to help you as well, right? Like, you could be in trouble. I'm not saying that, you know, but the majority of the time is, back to your point and what you said earlier, is your guys' job is to help us get paid and do things correctly. You know what I mean? Right. You're the guide rails, right? That's to
absolutely
keep us from doing dumb stuff, or somebody else from doing dumb stuff, right? Like somebody from another brokerage, like your capability of reaching out to another brokerage and being like, hey, this is what happened in this deal. We need to get this fixed.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you say that, because that is something that we do regularly. You know, we try to run as much interference as we can, you know, to try and keep things together. Can't always do it. We're not 100% successful. I mean, there's no magic formula. I had one recently that we were working on. It's an EMD issue. And, you know, EMDs are touchy, right? There's a couple different things that can happen. There's state law that runs into that. It normally is a buyer seller dispute, but, you know, I picked up, called the other broker. Hey, is there anything we can do? I don't know. My seller's being stubborn. I talked to our agent. I don't know. My buyer's being stubborn, you know, and sometimes we'll revisit that later, because if you have time on your side, sometimes cooler heads prevail over time. You know, learn that patience. And let's face it, real estate agents don't have a lot of patience, right? That's not a thing that most have. But what happens is that, you know, that's just an example of trying to run an interference, or just sending an email on behalf, or whatever it might be. We do a lot of those things. They don't always work, but at least we try. And that's where it is, right? Or we may say, you know, now is the time when you recommend that your client seek legal advice. Like, it's beyond our license at that point. Yeah. And that's another thing too that the brokers do that agents don't always realize. Like, agents want to help. And that's very admirable. But sometimes somebody has to point out to you that like, hey, this is beyond your license. You need to stop. Like you're now bordering on an area that isn't what we should be doing, right? Here's what we should be doing, and this is what we can do. The rest of it, you've got to refer them to somebody else. And that's hard sometimes because you want to fix everything.
Yeah.
And that takes, and I didn't always know that, right? As an agent, like I'm being very frank with you. It took me years in the business to learn that.
Yeah.
Like, I tried to do everything, and you can't do everything. Just like I told you, Jimmy, you can't do everything.
Yeah.
Like, stop trying to do everything. Right?
Yep. And again, it's always about too, like, just how do I make the situation better, right? Like, and again, it could be just like I just get in touch with one of the brokers and say, hey, this is what I have going on, and you just simply saying, well, just do A, B, and C, and it should be fine. And I go back and do A, B, and C, and everything's fine. But I just didn't think of, there was just something I didn't think about, right?
Sure.
Just talking through situations and other things. So again, it's how important a broker is to your business. And again, get over your ego. You don't have all the answers, right? Like get over your ego. You don't have all the answers. And again, utilize your brokers. And if you haven't met your broker, I challenge all of you to get into your room and meet with your brokers, right? Just be like, hey, just introduce yourself. Hey, Nick, this is Jimmy. Jimmy, this is Nick. How are you? Good. Right.
So I'm gonna give everybody a little tip on the agent attraction really fast. And I'm gonna call somebody out while we're on this call.
Oh, I love it.
Kurt Shewell does this better than anybody. He is trying to attract an agent to EXP. He literally will bring them in EXP world just to meet the brokers. He'll be like, hey, let me show you how easy it is to get a hold of your broker. And he'll pop in, pull the ticket. He's got his avatar going and he's got somebody with him. And I'll pull him back. Hey, Kurt, what do I need? What's going on? How can I help you today? He's like, nothing, man. How are you today? He's like, I just wanted to, I've got John over here. He's thinking about joining EXP. And I just wanted to show him how accessible you are. Like, that's it. Like, it's that simple. Like, he's just showing, hey, this is how easy it is. Yeah. I got him in literally 2 minutes. And he's right here. He's ready to help me, right? And I'm not the only one he does that with. He does it with Christy. He does it with Chat. You know what I mean? But it's a pro move. I mean, it is a pro move. And Kurt, if you're listening, I'm calling you out, brother. I love you, but I'm calling you out because you do something incredible, and everybody should be taking that cue, no matter what state. Yeah,
and he's pretty good at this agent attraction thing.
He is. Yeah, he's been doing it for a minute or two.
But you're right, but that's what I did. It's a tip that I've learned from him. Right, I watched him do this enough that I do the same thing now. I just throw it up in the world, pop in, and go here, because that is a big question. We're a cloud-based company, right? Well, if you're cloud-based, do you have an office? How do you get a hold of your broker? Like, some agents are good enough to ask those questions, right? I had Kurt on the show last week, and we talked about that. You should be as an agent, you should be interviewing the brokerage. You should be interviewing the team, whatever it is you're joining. They're not interviewing you. I'm interviewing them. Right. Like, and we have to, as agents, we have to start thinking that way instead of saying, well, will you take me? Well, crap, we should know by now. Everybody will take us, right?
Correct.
Our license will hang anywhere. Any one of these brokerages will take us. I can walk down the street and go to another brokerage. But is that a fit for me? Right. And that's one of the things I try to tell these younger agents is interview the brokerage, talk to the broker, right? Like, have this conversation. Don't just go in and sign up because they told you it's going to be great. Ask them questions. Why? What is the hard part? What is the struggle here? Right. Talk to other agents. Find out what they don't like about it. Right. And
I agree with you. That's 100%. Right. And that's something that I don't think enough agents do enough of. I think that I'm a firm believer in this. A lot of agents have heard me say this, and I say this in scripting, right? And buyer presentations and listing presentations. If you want better answers, you have to ask better questions because the questions you ask are directly related to the responses that you get. as a person. And I believe that in all things of life, right? Like that's just that's a basic, right? You know, it's something that you have to really think about and start to learn how to craft questions. Well, that goes back to whether you're joining a brokerage, whether you want to work with a seller, whether you want to work with a buyer, when you come in to explain something to your broker, a situation that you have, whatever it may be, you've got to think about the scenario and think about, how do I craft this in such a way, or how do I craft these questions where I get to the resolution? So I'll give you a real life example. And this is a tip that any agent can do. When I was running brick and mortar, agents would line up outside my door to come in and talk to me about situations or whatever. And finally, like, it took me a little while as a new broker and things like that. I had to be like, okay, like, there's got to be a better method to this. So then I would say to agents, and you can do this for yourself right now, I'd say, okay, when you come in and you sit down with me, you've got to be able to answer 3 questions, right? Who do we represent, buyer, seller, or both? Because most of the time they come in and say, my client, blah, 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 blah. I don't know who your client is. I'm not intimately involved in the transaction, right?
Right.
So buyer, seller, or both. What part of the contract or addendum are we talking about? So section 4, earnest money deposit, section 10, occupancy, whatever it is. And then what is your proposed solution, right?
Yeah.
Not what I'm going to tell you to do. What do you think we should do? Now, when you flip it and you think about it from that context, normally the agent can answer the question themselves. They're just coming to me for validation at that point.
Yes.
And what's happening there in that scenario when you do it that way is the agent is also indirectly learning how to become a better agent, right? They are teaching themselves how to become a better agent because you're learning how to dissect your own situations. And it's, again, that's why I said, you don't need Nick to do that. You can do that on your own. You can go through that mental check down, that mental checklist when you have a scenario yourself. And that's how you learn how to ask better questions.
I love that.
So something that, you know, I encourage all agents to do. Don't care what state you're in, right? Just anybody can do that, right?
Yep. And I think that's one of the things too. Sometimes it's better just to talk things through.
Correct.
You know what I mean? I know the answer, but then I'm questioning myself, right?
Correct.
If it's an earnest money, if it's, whatever it is, right? If I'm questioning myself on it. What should I be doing? And then what do I do moving forward then, right? Like, how do I, but sometimes it's better just to, like you said, just talk through that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I knew that, but I had to like get it out, right? I had to get it out.
And 100%. Look, I don't want you to think that I didn't want to talk to the agents. I did, but I wanted to have that framework was to get to a better conversation, right?
Yeah.
If you think about the conversation, if we don't have a framework, and that's what scripts and dialogues are. Scripts and dialogues are a framework, and people hate them, but you need them.
Yeah.
They're the rules to the game, right? You can't play baseball without knowing the rules to the game. Nobody would watch the game. The whole reason we love sports is because there's rules.
Yep.
And if you don't follow those, it's outside of the boundaries, right? Or whatever it might be. It provides a framework. And as an agent, we need those frameworks. And so when you have that framework to run by, it creates a scenario where you and I, agent broker, can have a much better conversation, right? Than we can if you just come in and start spilling out everything. You come in, you sit down with Nick and you go, hey, I represent the buyer on this one. And let me tell you what we're talking about here. It's the earnest money deposit, which is section 4 of the contract. And here's the scenario that I'm running into. Now, I think that we should do this, but I'd really love to hear your thoughts on it. Now we've got a real framework that allows me to ask some additional questions. Well, Jimmy, let me ask this. And then I go through whatever questions I have. And you're going to answer. And that also allows me to dig deeper at that point and ask another series of questions, right? And so on and so forth. And we can dissect where we are at that point, right? I mean, if you go into a doctor and you just tell him, hey, my arm hurts, he doesn't go, okay, great, your arm hurts. Yeah, we're just going to cut it off. He doesn't jump from my arm hurts to we're cutting it off. Well, let me ask you a question, Jimmy. When did it start hurting? Right. And you tell him. And then he goes, well, you know, did you do anything? It said it's 2 weeks. What were you doing 2 weeks ago? Well, I was roofing my house. Okay. Did you happen to hit it with a hammer? I mean, like he's going to start asking like more and more questions. You need a framework. Doctors have a framework. Next time you go to the doctor for a physical or any appointment, notice the conversation. It's a framework.
Yep. Yeah, and it's one of the things that we talk about on the morning call too, is like conversations with your clients, right? Listing appointments, buyers consultation, whatever it is, and framing that. And it's again, it goes back to just asking more questions.
Correct.
Right. And then going, oh, really? Why is that? Right? Like, so why do you need a fence? Right? Why do you need a fence? Oh, I've got 2 dogs. Oh, okay. So you got 2 dogs. Then, and I've caught myself on this before too. And I use this analogy all the time. Like I had a client that I was looking for, he wanted a 4-bedroom house. So I'm looking for 4-bedroom in his price range. And it was just tough to find. Right.
Sure.
So finally I said, why do you need the 4th bedroom? He goes, well, I just need a home office. I'm like, well, crap. That changed my whole thing, right? I'm like, you just need the space for a home office. He's like, yeah. So I go, but I didn't ask the question till later on about the 4th bedroom. And once I found that out, I was like, oh, it made my searches a lot easier. Found him a house. I could have changed the whole trajectory of that.
Absolutely. You want better answers, you got to ask better questions, right? Goes back to that, right? Like, and that's true of all things in life. So that's, look, I mean, that's something that agent can do on their own to get to at least, hey, here's my issue. Here's my problem. Let's pinpoint this down.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really what it is. I said this before on a call one time, like I had this little Italian grandmother. She used to watch Columbo. She loved that show, as a kid. Of course I didn't like it as a kid, and he was that bumbling idiot that constantly was asking another question, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To solve the crime. And, there's a lot to be learned from that. Like you got to keep asking and rephrasing and more asking. And then, and active listening is a big deal, right? Yep. Rephrasing and paraphrasing back. So Jimmy, let me make sure I understand correctly. You said that you work from home and you need a dedicated space. Does it have to have a door? There's another question, right? Or can it just be like an alcove or, and you're getting into the weeds at that point, and it might sound like minutia, but it's not, because now you can fit something to what they've said and they know you're actually paying attention to them. Right. People want to be heard. If you think about it, they want to be heard. They really do.
100%. And again, for you guys as brokers, like you understand that agents want to be heard.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like typically if we see something or don't like something, we need to let you guys know that.
Correct.
Right. And again, it's professional, right? It's never a personal thing. It's always professional. But if there's something that I don't like, I need to speak up about it. Right. And bring that to my brokers. Right.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Because you guys are the ones that can help fix it.
We try. I mean, we do our best, right? I mean, we can't fix everything, but we really do try. I mean, we do try to fix things when they come on our plate. I mean, that's part of what we do, right? If you think about a broker position, it's really a problem solver position, right?
Yeah.
Well, how do you solve problems? You find out what the cause is, and then and you move forward. I mean, it's those simple steps and that simple process. And again, that's a framework again. So you think about all the things that we do as agents. A lot of them are frameworks. That's how that works, and that's where it is a big deal, because that's something that we have to be more astute as agents, as people, as brokers, as a company, as whatever it is. Look. We don't hold the magic key anymore on information. When I first got started in this business 34 years ago, we were the gatekeepers of information, right? I like to think about, I got started in September of 90, right? You had to go to an agent to get information. You had to go to an agent to get information about a property and property tax information and school district information and all these things. The internet has changed that, right? They can get as much information as we have, if not more sometimes, if they dig deep enough. So in order for you to be a value to somebody, You have to be of value in a different way. And it's not that you can open up a lockbox, because anybody can do that too, right? If you take the course, get a license, pay the right fees, you now have access to open up a lockbox. That doesn't take a special skill set to do that. So if we're not gatekeepers of information, and we're not technically really a gatekeeper of entry anymore, and just so you know, entry could change in the future, right? It is very possible that appointments will be scheduled online directly with the seller, and they'll provide the entry, and we would be out of that mix. So then you have to ask yourself,
Don't scare everybody now.
I'm not trying to scare everybody. I'm just saying in the future, that could be a reality. So you have to ask yourself, what is it that I bring to the table? What is it that I am providing as a value? Is it my ability to communicate? Is it my ability to listen? Is it my ability to take information and simplify it in a manner that the client understands it and is willing to move forward based on that? And that's going to be where the game is going to be won and lost in the future, at least in my opinion. Right?
Yeah.
That's not an EXP opinion. That's not a broker team opinion. That's Nick's opinion, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think is going to be different in the future.
Yeah. Now let me ask. So on top of that, because I think you're spot on. There has to be another level of service, right? There has to be. What is your value? What's your value to a client? Because there's a million realtors out here. So what's your value? But so, and kind of going back to the NAR thing and the buyers, the buyers getting signed before we show them a house and all that stuff. How do you think that has affected what our value is? Like, do you think that we're doing a better job of showing what our value is, or are we just getting a paper signed now that we should have been getting signed all along?
I think it's half and half, right? 50-50.
Okay.
I think there's some agents that are just getting a paper signed. And I'm not saying EXP agents, I'm just saying across the board, right? There's just agents that are just, no, I got to get a paper signed. Great, right? But if you truly want to add value to that, you have to understand where that came from, right? Where that came from is fiduciary responsibility. If you understand fiduciary responsibility, if you start there as your foundation, think about like building a house, right? Fiduciary responsibility is the baseline for that. That's the foundation for that. The next piece of that is agency, right? Which is the nature of the relationship. So you're now disclosing what the nature of the relationship is. And the third layer on top of that is your contract, whether it be a listing contract or a buyer broker representation contract. That is now the terms and conditions of the relationship. If you want to be better at providing your value, then you lean into those, right? What I mean by that is that you become a student of fiduciary responsibilities and you understand what that is. And you use that as your baseline. Then you become a student of disclosure, right? Agency relationship, the nature of the relationship, whatever that looks like in your state. Well, how do you do that? You read the document cover to cover. You understand what the document is, and then you become really good at articulating it to your potential client. So you lean into that. And then on top of that, you lean into the documents. Now, EXP has done a great job of providing a exclusive authorization and right to sell document that's easy to understand and easy for agents to understand and easy for clients to understand. But again, it takes the agent leaning into it and reading it cover to cover and understanding what it is, and then being able to articulate it to the potential client. Same thing with the buyer broker representation agreement. So I think it's really like a step process, right? To become better at what it is that you do. Again, perfecting your craft.
Yeah.
Do I really want a surgeon that does one surgery a year? No. Time on task. I want somebody that's constantly educating themselves, constantly getting better. And education, I think people have the wrong opinion of education. It's not necessarily that you have to go take a class, right? Or you have to go somewhere to do it. I'm talking about reading the forms that we have to present to clients every single day. Go old school if you have to. Print them, grab a highlighter and highlight the sections that you don't understand, and then go to your broker team and say, can you help me with this?
Yeah.
I need framework on how to explain this better. I will gladly do that for any agent that comes to me anytime. I'm putting it out there right here, right now. You know what I mean? But you've got to do the work first, right? You
Yeah.
can't come to me and say, can you explain this document to me? You need to read it a couple of times. Tell me the points that you don't understand, and then I'll go over it with you. I have no problem. But you got to do just as much work as I'm doing at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know that's one of the things you've always said too is new agents in general print out the contracts, read them, right? Like 'cause you should know what section 32 is, right? Like
correct.
You should know what those are. So again, print those out, and then again when you have a situation, going back to the buyer broker, right? If I don't know what's on that buyer broker contract and I'm presenting it to my buyer, my potential client, and I'm like, just sign here. Well, you're going to have people out there that are going to go, I'm not signing that. Why do I need to sign that?
Correct.
And you're going to go, well, the rules changed, and they told us that we have to get this signed now. Like,
yeah.
well, I still don't want to sign it then, right? Because it doesn't make sense to me, right? So again, what's the value behind it, right? And again, it goes back to a good buyer's consultation. We have to treat our buyers like we did our sellers. And I don't think that's really changed. I think that's still the same. What do you think about like 2025? Are there any big changes coming for the next year, do you think?
I don't really know for sure, 100%. I mean, look, the DOJ weighed in with some opinions, and those are opinions at this point. And one of the things about the DOJ that people don't realize is that is an opinion, but in order to do something, it would take a law, right? It would take a federal law of some sort, to go down the path of what the DOJ is suggesting, right?
Right.
We stand a better chance of state laws getting approved before we do a federal law within the real estate community. And again, I don't know anything, so I don't know 100%. Here's what I do know though. Like we have had some changes, and there is a new basically framework to how we need to do business. And you have a choice. And this is what I say to agents all the time, because I hear this. Well, look, the old way was better and blah, 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 blah. I get it. I just said earlier in this conversation, 34 years I've been doing this in September, right?
Yeah.
So I've been doing it the old way for a really long time. But I also know that the future is going to happen no matter what. I have a choice. I either participate or I sit on the sidelines and wish it was the way that it used to be. I'm going to choose to change and participate. Right now, I can't force agents to do that. I can only recommend that they do that. So instead of wasting breath in 2025 that, hey, I want it to be the way that it was, this is stupid. I hope that they change it back. That to me is wasted energy and wasted breath. I just say, look, learn the new way, learn the new docs, become really proficient, make sure you can articulate in a really effective manner, because I'm going to, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to articulate in a really effective manner. So I'll compete with those agents that don't want to all day long. Bring it on. I'm glad that you don't want to participate. That's just making my life easier.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, this is what everybody has to understand. The broker's job and the paperwork and all things, it's all there to protect us.
Correct.
That's what it's all there for. Your job as a broker is to protect me. Right.
Correct.
Whether however brutally I screw up, you're supposed to help me out.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. You're my broker. So I'll blame it on you then. But the paperwork, it's a pain in the neck, right? None of us like to do it. I mean, if you do like to do it, you're a psychopath. But but the other thing is, like, if you that's all there for our protection, right? That's all there for our protection. Yeah. That's all it's there for. And I encourage you all to reach out to your brokers, in your state brokers, whatever state you're in, and whatever. And if you're not with EXP, then still reach out to your broker, find your broker, have conversation with them. But reach out to your brokers, have conversation with them, and they're on your side. So we appreciate everything you do, my friend, and we appreciate it. And where can everybody find you other than the broker room?
So Here's where you can find me. You can find me a couple of different places. You can find me on Instagram as It's Nick Coppola. So ITS and then Nick Coppola, because there's more than one Nick Coppola. So you got to do that. YouTube channel coming. I've been asked several times where people are like, hey, can you do some trainings? Can you do some videos? Can I get the script that you use? I have written down nothing, and I need to get that out there to people to try and help some more. So it's coming. It's in the works. So same thing, Nick Coppola. You can search me out on YouTube. First set of videos are going to be dropped in January. We've been recording some stuff, which is really great. And then you can find me in EXP World as well, right? And I'm willing to talk to anybody. If you're from another state, I'm probably going to defer you to your state brokers. More than willing to at least have a conversation with anybody that wants to. But that's where you can find me. It's the best places to get Nick. And then Facebook, obviously, Nick Coppola, you can find me there too. So reach out, on LinkedIn as well. And, more than happy to try and help anybody I can. I really appreciate you giving me some time here. I love being on the podcast. I'm always gracious to be a guest, right? Like it's a privilege, you're invited at that point. So
I thank you for joining us and coming on and joining us this morning and being there. So I got some music to play us out. But again, the Elite Real Estate Podcast, find us anywhere you find podcasts. You can find us on KGCI Radio, all those places at now. And appreciate your time, Nick. Next Friday, we will be back live doing it here on KGCI Radio and streaming everywhere. Take it easy, guys. We are out.